Welcome back in. Today we're going to be discussing some of our favorite wide receiver sleepers that you should be looking to target in your upcoming fantasy draft. So without further ado, Cody, who are some of your favorite late round wide receivers you are looking to target?
I'm going to start with some low hanging fruit here. Obviously, last night, if anyone watched the preseason game between the Ravens and the Commanders, we had Terry McLaurin leave with a toe injury. Now it seems like he could be okay for Week 1. Some of the reports that are coming out, but Dr. Chow, aka the Pro Football Doc, said this is something that could absolutely linger into the season and affect him for the first couple of weeks. So I'm going to kick things off with Penn State great Jahan Dotson. Got to give some love to him. Put up over 500 yards as a rookie. Had 7 touchdowns on just 35 receptions, which is a 20% TD rate. Obviously, it goes without saying that that is entirely unsustainable. But he also only had about 60 targets. I think it was like 61, 62. Now we have Bieniemy coming over from Kansas City, and we're absolutely going to see the passing volume go up. Seems like Sam Howell's at least going to be respectable as a starting quarterback. Be around like an average starting quarterback, which is really all we need. And then with Bieniemy coming over, like I said, that passing volume was going to go up just naturally. And then we also have the pace of play that is absolutely going to change with Bieniemy coming over. Last year, the Commanders were 31st in situation neutral pace of play, and Kansas City was third. If we go back a year after that, Washington was a little bit better. They were 20th in situation neutral pace of play. Kansas City was at third again. So that passing volume was going to go up one way or another. And now that we have more plays overall coming in, that's obviously going to help out the passing volume just overall. So Washington also has the 8th most difficult schedule. Their defensive line is obviously their strength, but like outside of that, they have questions on, between their linebackers and their secondary as well. So I think the McLaurin injury, even without that, I think Dotson is going to be a solid pick at like wide receiver 36 to 38, depending on where you look right now. But now with Terry McLaurin, potentially being banged up for the first couple of weeks, and then depending on how long that injury could linger, could obviously re-aggravate it. So Dotson could end up being the wide receiver 1 for whether it's a short amount of time or an extended period of time in this season. Jahan Dotson is going to be a guy you should definitely be targeting.
You don't need nothing out of me. I've been talking about Johan Dotson all offseason with a healthy Terry McLaurin. So
Yep.
if Terry McLaurin's going to miss any time or be lingering or anything like that, then yes, it's wheels up for Johan Dotson. So I love that call. For me, it is a second-year wide. For me, the guy that I really want to hit on is Elijah Moore. Obviously when he first came out, there was a lot of hype surrounding him, and actually in 2021. Week 7 through 13, he was the wide receiver 4 overall. He's been having a great camp. Obviously, he was traded to the Cleveland Browns and from the New York Jets, and I mean, so now he gets to play with the best quarterback he's ever got to play with, because he has been playing with guys like Zach fucking Wilson and Joe
Low bar.
Flacco and Mike White and Josh Johnson and Chris Streveler. I mean, we're talking about some really, really bad quarterback play here that he has been saddled with. But if you look at Wilson, I mean, Wilson, 5.4 yards per target for Wilson over the last 2 years. But from all other Jets quarterbacks, well, Elijah Moore averaged 8.2 yards per target, safely above the league average for wide receiver. So I think that obviously that's been a big problem for him, but now he doesn't have to worry about that. We've actually seen Elijah Moore kind of get a little bit more opportunities out of the backfield, kind of like Debo Samuel type role here for the Cleveland Browns. So I really, really like that he's going to take that big step forward this year. He's going to get a lot of snaps from the slot. And honestly, it really wouldn't shock me if he outproduces Amari Cooper. Like, I know Amari Cooper is kind of thought of to be the alpha in this offense, but Amari Cooper is getting a little bit older. And, I just think that Elijah Moore is that dude. I think Elijah Moore is a very talented wide receiver, and he was just in a really bad spot. Obviously, the staff didn't really like him either. I think Deshaun Watson is going to bounce back in a pretty big way this year. We kind of saw it over the last couple of games last season. And so I just think this is going to be a very good offense for Elijah Moore. I think his passing rate is going to go up dramatically here for the Cleveland Browns. And it's like I've said, I just continue to say it. I think this offense is going to be a top 12 passing offense this year. And I think that is very good news for someone like Elijah Moore, who I think it's going to be utilized all over the place because he is terrific after the catch. And I think they're going to try to get him in space. And like I said, I think you could even see like maybe 3 or 4 carries a game. I think he is an absolute steal at where he's currently going off the board.
Yeah, I like that call. And I think if you're in a dynasty league, he's someone you should be going and trying to get if you don't already have him before the season starts. Because like that hype has kind of like died down a little bit. from the beginning of camp. So I think now would be the time to try and go out and get him. But the guy I want to talk about next is going to be Michael Gallup, coming off of boards as wide receiver 64. I think he's being overlooked, man. Obviously, you have CeeDee Lamb, who's a certified stud. People are excited about Brandon Cooks being in that offense. And it's like Michael Gallup doesn't even exist. We're talking about a guy who put up over 1,100 yards in his second season. He obviously took a step back in 2020, and then he's been battling injuries over the past 2 years. But by all reports and everything that's coming out of Cowboys camp is he's finally fully healthy. He was not fully healthy last year. If you remember, he had the late ACL tear the year before. He was back, I think, maybe for week 1, if not like week 2 or 3. And then at the end of the season, I think something that has been looked over was that he had another ankle surgery. So he was not healthy at all throughout last season. Ended up getting another surgery at the end of the season, but now seems to be fully back, to full health. Seems to be making plays. He obviously has rapport with Dak Prescott. I know everyone's excited about Cooks, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Gallup could end up seeing more targets than Cooks. And if anything were to happen to Cooks or Lamb this season, that would obviously be a massive, massive boost for Michael Gallup. So I think, especially in deeper leagues, he's someone that you should be looking to take a swing on. I think he's going to be one of the better red zone weapons in this Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said there. The next guy I want to talk about is Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 58, 165th overall. I just can't quit him. Honestly, on the surface level, I get it. Darnell Mooney wasn't great last year. 40 catches, 493 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns was not great at all. But if you kind of peel back the layers a little bit, I don't think it was really all him. I mean, if you look at him, he had last year, he had a 25% target share, but he was 19th in market share of air yards, but he was 18th in yards per route run, 19th in yards between pass attempts, and 18th in route win rate last year as a wide receiver. Now, Darnell Mooney is not a wide receiver one. I don't think we've ever thought that. He's always been much more of a wide receiver two. And I think now they have their wide receiver one in DJ Moore. And I think that takes some pressure off of Darnell Mooney and allows him to be utilized a little bit differently. And Darnell Mooney obviously has the speed to be a deep threat as well in this offense. And I do think Justin Fields is going to take a big step forward this year as a passer. They're not going to be averaging 22 pass attempts per game, which is dead last in the league like they did last year. I think this team probably gets to 30, 32, 33 pass attempts per game, which would put them more in line to be league average in that regard. And so, they've improved this offensive line here for the Chicago Bears this offseason, adding Darnell Wright, adding Nate Davis to this offensive line. So that's going to be a big help as well. And so, much like we've seen a lot with these other quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, that once they finally surrounded the quarterback with really good weapons, they took off. So Darnell Mooney, I think, is being criminally undervalued. I think Darnell Mooney can easily be a wide receiver 3 in this offense. And he is a very good wide receiver. Like I said, he's not an elite wide receiver. He's not an alpha number 1, but he certainly can be a very, very good number 2 wide receiver in this offense.
Everybody's goal in life should be to find someone as much as Kev loves Darnell Mooney. My last guy I'm going to talk about here, going to go deep on this one. We're going to go Michael Wilson, who's coming off the board as wide receiver 90 in Fantasy Pros and still only wide receiver 84 on Underdog. I was surprised to see that. I thought with some of the hype that he's been getting throughout training camp, that was going to be a little bit higher, but he's not even, rising on Underdog draft boards yet. He was one of the more surprising picks of the 2023 NFL draft. He was the 31st pick in the 3rd round. Normally whenever you see someone like that, it's because, they had a really nice combine. They were a big time producer in college. And Michael Wilson was really neither of those things. He had a fine combine, 68th percentile speed score. He was in the upper 70s for both burst and agility scores, but he wasn't a big time producer. His best year was his second year at Stanford, and that was under 700 yards and 5 scores. But it sounds like from everything that we're hearing out of Cardinals camp is that he is, he's making noise, he's making a lot of plays, and he has already surpassed Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch and seems to have that wide receiver 2 spot locked down outside of Hollywood Brown. Now, obviously, this isn't an offense that we're particularly excited about. Everyone's expecting the Cardinals to be actually one of the worst teams in the NFL. That defense is one of the worst defenses we've seen on paper. Maybe they can play a little bit better, but it's not like they're even going to be above league average, I don't think. The thing that excites me with all of that is the fact that this team is going to be playing from behind a ton. There's going to be a bunch of garbage time production to go around. Garbage time production counts just as much as, as everything else. So And then you also have to think about the fact that Hollywood Brown is someone who tends to get banged up a bunch as well. So could be some weeks where Michael Wilson is like the de facto wide receiver one. So all those things considered, I think he's worth taking a shot on, especially if you're in a deeper league, and if at the very least he's a name we need to monitor throughout the beginning of the season because he could end up being a decent waiver wire pickup who ends up giving you flex worthy weeks.
Lastly, my last guy is Jaden Reed. Surprise, surprise. I've talked about him quite a bit. Wide receiver 75, 246. I'm surprised he hasn't gone up. He's actually had a pretty solid preseason. He's flashed. He's really been really good in training camp as well. I just don't know why he doesn't go up. Like, I have drafted a ridiculous amount of him in underdog drafts. I think I've at like 60% in Jaden Reed. By far the most of any wide receiver that I own in best ball. But if you look at him, I mean, obviously played at Michigan State, not really a fancy offense, not one that's like a high-powered passing offense by any means. But last year at 55 catches, 636 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. He has tremendous short area quickness. Right after the catch ability is 100% there, and he's a very strong special teamer as well, which is really kind of translates to the next level. So I love Jaden Reed. I think he's going to instantly steps in. He's the number 3 wide receiver. He's the slot wide receiver with Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson playing on the outside. And to be quite honest with you, like, I just don't think, like, I would not be surprised if he ends up leading this team in targets this year. I know everybody's falling over themselves with Christian Watson, and I like Christian Watson, but Christian Watson was still kind of a little bit fluky, right? With all the touchdowns that he scored in that short amount of time. I mean, we've seen this guy from guys like Will Fuller in the past, where they come out and they score all these touchdowns and we get all excited about it. But Christian Watson struggled with injuries last year, and he's still pretty raw. Like, he's not something that we've been able to see that can run like a full route tree yet. And then Jaden Reed is a tremendous route runner, and that's something we know he can do. And so with Jordan Love, I think that's the other question mark. And I think everybody's kind of assumed that Jordan Love's just going to be terrible, but I think there's that other side of it where Jordan Love could actually be good, because in preseason, I think he's actually played pretty well. The offense has looked really good. Again, grain of salt because of this preseason, but I still think Jaden Reed is a very solid option later in drafts. And I would not be surprised if he ends up being like a low end wide receiver 2 in this offense. Like, I think it's there. Like, I think he could be the number 1 target in this offense. Like, it's not crazy to say. As much as I like Christian Watson, I mean, Christian Watson needs to develop more as a route runner and to be able to run a more refined route tree to be able to sit here and say that he's going to be this alpha wide receiver that's going to have a large target share in this offense. So, with that being said, like, I think Jaden Reed is somebody that I'm going to pretty much leave every single draft with Jaden Reed, and nobody's really drafting him right now, so he's absolutely free. So, other guys that you could be talking about: Marvin Mims for the Denver Broncos. He is now the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. I really like him. Rashee Rice, last preseason game, had 8 catches, 90 yards, and he's starting to really look good. You're seeing all the stuff the Chiefs like. His yards after the catch ability is there. As much as I like Sky Moore, if Sky Moore doesn't fire, Rashee Rice could end up being that guy. And then A.T. Perry is having a really strong camp for the Saints. I know a lot of people like Rashid Shaheed, but we'll see on that. But I think A.T. Perry could be a really sneaky guy that later in the year, not somebody you're probably looking to draft, but at least somebody that we're going to be talking about in waivers and stuff like that. Then other guys like Josh Downs, Puka Nakau, Jalen Hyatt, Tank Dell, Rondell Moore, I think are all late round wide receivers that I'm looking to target. All we're looking for is ceiling. We do not care about floor. I'm not going to be drafting guys like Odell Beckham and Adam Thielen and guys that their names. Those are guys we don't want to target. We want to avoid those players. All we're looking for is straight ceiling in these later rounds. We're trying to hit home runs, because if they don't work out, you're just going to drop them anyways for guys on the waiver wires. So hit the like and subscribe button for future content. Let us know in the comments section below who's your favorite wide receiver sleeper heading into 2023, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.